You ever look at someone's story and it just doesn't add up? How a person with seemingly every disadvantage could have an absolutely world-changing impact? Well, that's the story of Jonathan Goforth. It's a real paradox of power, and we're going to unpack how he did it.
Let's start with this quote, directly from Goforth himself. All hindrance to revival is in ourselves. That's a pretty bold statement, right? He's suggesting the biggest thing holding back profound change isn't something out there in the world, it's right here, inside of us. And this idea? It was the bedrock of his entire life.
And here's that paradox in a nutshell. I mean, look at this. On the left, you have his profile. He wasn't a natural with languages, he wasn't physically strong, and his life was just full of setbacks. By any normal standard, he was not the guy for the job. But then, you look at the results on the right. Staggering revivals, huge numbers of people converted, entire regions completely transformed. So the question is, how in the world does the person on the left produce the results on the right?
To figure that out, we've got to start with the man himself. Goforth's story is all about being an unlikely instrument, someone who, on paper, just seemed totally unqualified for the massive task he had in front of him.
So who was Jonathan Goforth? He was a Canadian missionary who, with his wife Rosalind, packed up and moved to China way back in 1888. And listen, this wasn't some short-term gig. They gave their entire lives to this work, serving for more than 4 decades in a culture that was completely alien to them. But here's the thing, it wasn't some overnight success story. Not even close. A massive turning point was coming for him, a journey to what he called surrender that would completely flip his whole understanding of ministry and power.
You can see here, this whole thing was a slow burn. After he gets to China in 1888, he gets really inspired by another missionary, a guy named Hudson Taylor, and this idea of full surrender. Then, years later, he hears about a massive revival happening in Wales, and it just stirs him to start praying differently, not just for results, but for real spiritual power. It took a full 20 years, all the way to 1908, before revival finally erupted in Manchuria. A long, slow process.
So what changed over those 2 decades? Well, he found what he believed to be the source of true power. The real answer to our paradox lies in where he thought his effectiveness was actually coming from. It all came from this conviction. He used to say, "We may preach, but unless God works, nothing will come of it." For him, talent, amazing speeches, perfect programs, all of that was secondary. He truly believed that if God wasn't in it, all human effort was basically useless. His entire ministry was really built on this one verse from the Bible, Zechariah 4:6, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit." That was his answer. He never ever pointed to his own wisdom or his own skill for the revivals. He just saw himself as a channel for a power that was working through him because he'd surrendered his life. And here's a crucial part of his thinking. That process had to start with the messenger, with him. Before he ever called on others to change, he was focused on his own heart. See, it all connects back to that core belief. The revival you want to see out there, it has to start in here, inside of you, first. Okay, so how do we make this practical? What are the takeaways here? What can we learn from the lessons Goforth learned the hard way, in the fire of his own experience? You know, Goforth's whole philosophy can really be boiled down to 3 main things. First, prepare your own heart before you even think about trying to change someone else's. Second, act with this genuine faith that a power greater than you is at work. And third, a lesson in just incredible perseverance. Don't stop sowing, even when you see 0 results for years and years. And that idea of don't stop sowing, man, it just carries an almost unimaginable weight when you see this. 5, that's the number of children Jonathan and Rosalind lost and buried during their time in China. The personal cost of their commitment was just immense. And on top of that unimaginable loss, they endured riots, they faced constant rejection, and they suffered in ways that, frankly, most of us just can't fathom. And yet, through all of it, they stayed. They just kept on sowing, trusting that the power for the harvest came from somewhere completely beyond themselves. And so here we are, full circle. Jonathan Goforth, this incredibly unlikely instrument, came to the conclusion that his greatest obstacle wasn't the foreign culture or the language barrier or even his own immense personal tragedy. It was himself. And that leaves us with a really challenging question to ask ourselves. What if our greatest hindrance is us, too?